welcome. As Allison mentioned, today we're going to mostly talk about me and my experiences, but also a little bit about integration. That was a joke. But I will tell you a little bit about the fact that I'm now head of strategy for Isobar, but just a little under a year ago, I was the digital client for Adidas, or as we used to say in the States, Adidas. And when I was at Adidas, integration was the holy grail for a digital marketer like me. It meant that all of my advertising, all of my content, everything that all the tools that I had to talk to my consumer were going to be first rate, because I was sitting at the same table as the advertising manager and the communications manager. So the creative look and feel was going to be the same. We were going to be measured on the exact same impact of our experience and our advertising. And we were going to build these holistic strategies and campaigns that, kind of looked alike. But what we really ended up doing, if I'm completely honest, a lot of times, is building advertising and creative, and mostly TV spots to repurpose across all sorts of different disciplines. So whether it led with a print ad or led with a TV spot, we would take that content and try to develop behind the scenes or kind of cooler flash interactions with it. But if, again, I'm completely honest, we weren't really using all of the tools that digital enables, in the sense that we weren't following the consumer on this new journey that they can take now that the web is such a huge part of their lives. What we really did is we said, wow, there's some more screens out there. How can we put the exact same content on them so that we can begin to repeat our message, and hopefully people will recall it and know what it is we're talking about. So when just recently I was asked to join you guys today and talk about integration, I did sort of a study of it. And so please take this as a work in progress and take it upon yourselves to decide, what type of time it is that we're really working in as far as integration is concerned. Because in my study, my short study of integration, obviously we're currently existing in this exciting world of fragmentation, right? And apologies for the buzzword, but I felt like it made sense here because both traditional agencies, advertising and media, and digital agencies use this word to the same end, right? It's basically in this time of fragmentation where, mass media is over and long tail and what have you, we need a new strategy. And the traditional guys say, oh, we need to lead with TV, and maybe it's a 90-second TV spot this time instead of a 30. And from that, we can build down into the other different disciplines. And the digital guys say, whoa, hang on a second, back up. We have all this data. We're the only ones who are accountable for our message, and consumers are spending a lot more time on our digital channels. So we're the ones who should lead the strategy and who should be the beginning or the birth of integration. And the hilarious thing to me, and I can say this because I guess I've been sort of on both sides, and I'm on the stage now, so I can point the fingers. But the hilarious thing to me, really, is that while we're fighting over whether it starts with TV or whether it starts with digital or whether it starts with media, the consumer is finding more and more ways they're finding more and more ways to make what we do and what we produce totally obsolete. Right? Like, they're skipping ads, they're talking amongst themselves, they're building communities around brands, they're sharing insights on blogs. I mean, we're still sort of trying to come up with channel strategies when the really fascinating thing is that, consumers don't live like that anymore. It's really about a lot of things, but one of them is new platforms, right, that don't play by channel rules. So in my study, I found sort of a lot of interesting insights like this one. So must-see TV shows like Lost are getting over 1 million legal downloads per episode. And the UK accounts for between 10 and 25% of all TV piracy online. So just to bust you guys. But, to me, what this says is people are not just watching TV on another screen, but they're downloading all sorts of different content, music, television shows, movies, or whatever. I mean, do we even assume that they're downloading the commercials? I mean, this is TV right here. It's not an advertising platform. It's not a channel when it's downloaded like this. So these new platforms are preventing us from, in an integrated or traditionally integrated strategy, playing by these channel rules. And new behaviors, and God, I mean, you guys probably want to shoot me if I'm going to start talking about multitasking in 2007, right? But it's not really about that anymore. Multitasking is this absolutely accepted habit, and it's usually, presented in a way that, is sort of Dilbert in the office on instant messenger while he's also trying to do his work. But what this kind of warp speed multitasking says to me is that media consumption's active, yes, but it's also responsive. So if this guy is, in fact, watching American Idol, Googling the names of the cast members, and sharing insights or hilarious jokes or making fun of somebody with all of his friends, there's going to come a time where he expects the TV or the content to talk back to him. I mean, if we're all in agreement of one thing, it's that every time everybody sits in front of a computer screen, they're at the center of their own world. So if this guy is doing everything he possibly can to get an answer from his friends or from Google or to get a response out of the content that he's consuming, when are we going to flip that switch and say, that's what they want? They want us to follow them down their consumer path and be ready with answers when they have questions about our products, our messaging, and what we stand for as brands. Because ostensibly, it's all about them, right? They assume that we're just sitting there waiting for them, and in some cases, we are. But when I look across all of the models for integration and ones that I've employed in my past and have experimented with as head of strategy for a huge global digital network, repetition still reigns. I mean, the birth of integration potentially was about message recall and aiding recall so that you made an impact and so that you wore in. But the terrifying thing is, why are we using these old tactics when consumers have shown us through their behavior that they want something else? So, as I said, I have, in fact, experimented with 3 out of the 4 of these integration models, and I'm not sure if you guys are entirely familiar with all of them, and I hope that you're not. But the first one on the top right is really about, I have a core idea, or the big idea, and I'm going to repurpose that idea across all my channels, like digital, if those of us in the room are still considering digital a channel, or TV, or print, or PR, or retail. And the second one is basically that in the top right, I'm going to create a digital campaign, a print campaign, an out-of-home campaign, a TV campaign that drives to build my brand image. So it's basically the same thing, right? Using the same tools. The bottom left is the chronological model for integration, right? We start with advertising, and then that leads us into the website, and then users post generated content. Then we recontact them through email, and we hope that they go through this exact funnel every time they experience one of our TV ads. And the last one is sort of the new buzzier one, right? It's amplification. So I'm going to start with this huge, great, awesome idea, and I'm going to amplify that through everything I do. But, if I'm very cynical, I'm going to say that that's basically the same model, just looking a little bit cooler. So just to reiterate, as far as digital is concerned and integration, it's not really a channel, right? I mean, just because it's a screen doesn't mean that you have to put a TV spot there or, acceptable advertising there. Because, as I mentioned earlier, traditional and digital creative agencies tell stories about brands. They tell beautiful ones, amazing ones across all sorts of different platforms. And traditional and digital media agencies buy time to allow these stories to be told. But, if we're really honest, right now, it's our consumers who tell the most powerful stories about our brands. So, with all that in mind, what is integration now? Is it integration of message? Is it integration of creative look and feel? Is it integration of data? Is it integration of channels and how they're planned? Is it, sort of media neutral philosophy for one big idea that you can repurpose? I mean, it's still a little bit about efficiencies and measurement, but ostensibly, it's not really about making online work with TV, or it's not that alone. It's not about repurposing creative for a better recall. And it's not only about context and relevancy. So, if you're asking yourself what integration is now, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what the answer is, because it's custom to each consumer experience. And it's custom to each product, message, or brand that you're trying to sell or build. But I think there are some key tenets and key things that we can do as marketers, and especially as digital marketers, that can help fuel this new way of thinking about integration. And one is, it's quite obvious, but it's a deeper understanding of consumer behavior. So, again, consumers are beginning in a very real sense to own brands and participate in their creation. We need to learn to let go. And I think this quote has been used quite a bit in terms of allowing consumers to generate content. There's a lot of GM and Ford examples of user-generated video and some controversial video. But what I like about this is that consumers are getting a real sense of brands, and they want to own them, and they want them to be a part of their lives more than ever before. It's not just about holding a loyalty card. It's about conversations, about communities, and it's about really sort of investing in a brand, perhaps for a lifetime or for a moment. It's not, and as marketers, it's not, just about letting go. It's about understanding those consumer insights and trying to apply them to what we do from an integrated aspect. So, it's also about using communications platforms, not just media channels, to fuel conversations. So a lot of times I think we hope that our TV advertising will trickle all the way down into the blogosphere and create buzz. But this is not working. But oftentimes it's so much more kind of organic than that, or even grassroots, in the sense that, this is a really interesting point of view about consumer behavior, not just about Google and data, right? It's increasingly a product's quality and what the brand stands for is determined by Google. And I think that's because via search, Google determines, the relevancy as far as how their rankings are listed, but also, the popularity. So how many other consumers have chosen this link as the source of information from this search term? So, Google, ostensibly in some ways, is a democratic voice of the people, if you believe in their data mining and their algorithms and how their popularity works. That was very controversial. Please don't quote me on that. But it's, in my mind, it's that that's fueling a lot of how consumers are taking on brands. So how high are you ranked in Google? Could that necessarily determine, the word of mouth and all the buzz that's building around your brand? Because if you think of a consumer journey, right, from kind of notice to purchase, it often begins with some sort of notice in the sense that someone's told you about it, you've seen a TV ad, you've seen the product yourself. You search for it on Google or search for a type of product on Google. Hopefully your product ranks high or the information that you've provided is interesting to the consumer. And then perhaps next you go through forums or blogs or consumer reviews to determine if what you've seen in Google is actually ratified by what consumers who are actually purchasing the product are doing. Because now word of mouth it's a public conversation carried out on these blogs, as this quote says from Chris Anderson in his book. I mean, this is really interesting in the sense that, as far as data is concerned, are we looking at and are we measuring the right things? Because what we have been measuring is, whether our ads have run, whether they've been clicked on, whether there's any sort of recall, what the post-click analysis is, whether they've driven sales, how efficiently we've bought that media. But if we build tools for data collection and plan strategically for analysis and optimization, that doesn't necessarily mean an ad serving platform or a website analysis tool. And in my mind, it means a platform through which we can understand what consumers are saying about our brand. I mean, it's all out there. So how do we measure it from the point of notice through to purchase and then drive that advocacy? And I think a lot of it has to do with data. I mean, obviously, people read, consume, listen to, view, whatever it is, all these thousands and trillions and gajillions of gigs of data every day. So what do we do with that data? I mean, is that something that we're just measuring for the heck of it? Or are we really directing our measurement and analysis of data so that we can build better integrated communications because we're understanding the consumer's journey, not just hoping for message recall? But I think, this quote's pretty timely. It's, right now, all we're doing is measuring how cheaply I'm buying the pig, not figuring out whether the hot dog tastes good. So we know that the ad ran, we know that it was quite popular and clicked on, and we know that it drove kind of X number of sales through to e-commerce. But what happened in the retail stores? What happened to people who didn't click on the ad? What happened to people who bought the product? Did they talk about it? Did they tell people about it? Did they sign up for more product? I mean, all of the stuff that we're able to measure today very efficiently might not be the stuff that fuels integration of tomorrow. But I still think in the future, the guy with the most data wins if he knows what to do with it. So I think one of the most important things to consider if we're using integration across a consumer journey rather than, again, repeating creative messages across different platforms, it's to listen, to be receptive, and to respond. It's like, okay, great, Tara, easier said than done, or yes, we've heard that 1,000 times, but have we acted on it? I mean, let's call ourselves out here for a second as digital marketers. I mean, I think this is one of the most interesting, measured statistics. So if we rewind to the beginning of the presentation where I told you that I used to be a client, and I was talking to Layla, who's a colleague of mine this morning, and basically letting her know that, measurement is so key, and why don't clients want to do it, and why don't they want to understand it? And if I really think back and dig deep, it's that, to be honest, as a digital marketer, when I was head of digital for Adidas, I wanted to be measured, the success of my campaigns, the success of what I put out there, I wanted to be measured on the same terms as TV. I didn't want to have to be accountable for all the tracking and the post-click analysis and the accountability that comes from digital as far as the tools that we currently have to measure the effectiveness of campaigns. But if I look at this data, where the survey question says, please indicate how often you take the following actions with regard to advertising. So consumers are more likely to visit stores or websites on their own after seeing online ads than they are likely to click. So 67% of the respondents say they notice a web ad, then check out the product later in a physical store. See, I was right. I did not need to be measured by those same tools and crazy, ad serving and all of that stuff that was going on 3 or 4 years ago. I could have just been measured exactly the same way as my offline counterparts. Or could I? Because I think if we're really, really honest, what we want to do as digital marketers is to be able to measure and prove the right thing, but also to listen to what consumers are saying and to respond back. So, this quote is really about the building of communities, and if you take it to more micro level, it's about kind of one-on-one relationships between brands and consumers. So I'm not sure I necessarily agree with everything that Henry Jenkins is saying here, but the key is to produce something that both pulls people together and gives them something to do. I don't have to control the conversation to benefit from their interests. Okay, that's totally true, right? Creating community, perhaps around your brand or perhaps around a message that's relevant to your brand, absolutely. But if we rewind a little bit to the beginning of the presentation when we said the consumer who goes online wants everything around them to center around them. It's all about them, and they want to be at the center of the universe. So if you're just pulling people together and then shoving them off and not responding or not listening in an authentic way, then are your relationships, are your communications, and are the communities that you build going to be meaningful? So, if we're talking about listening and responding and integration through the consumer journey, I feel like if that's my thesis, I need to back it up a little bit. So, the very interesting thing about this campaign, which ran in the United States during the Super Bowl, was that it led with a digital contest. So basically it said, create your own TV spot. So then obviously people created their own TV spot and posted it. Then we'll let other people watch it and vote on it in sort of a big sweepstakes or contest type fashion. And then we'll select the winner and play it on TV. So, not to get too geeky, but this is fascinating to me, right? So, user-generated content, communities, and Super Bowl ad. I mean, Doritos and Frito-Lay just busted out with all of the cool digital stuff for this one. But at the same time, they really did actually follow the consumer journey. So they said, okay, some people are going to want to post ads, and some people are going to want to look at ads, and we need to make that experience engaging and fun and involving. And we don't necessarily need TV to drive that. We don't need to tell them about it on TV or tell them about it on print. We can simply put it on package and put it online and have people participate in whatever way that they want and build a community of fans perhaps around one of the winners, or a community around the type of excitement that we're building around our brand. And then we're going to use TV in a very unique way, which is basically to say we all agree that TV is such an important platform if you're a brand to message something. It's expensive, it's sight, sound, in motion, it's 30 seconds. Some people make small movies. I mean, it can be beautiful and great. And historically, it's been such a huge part of advertising. But Doritos said, we're going to use it as that and exploit it for that. So if you win, we're going to put you on TV, but not just TV. The creme de la creme of US TV spots is Super Bowl ad. And then we're going to do everything right on the back end. So once we run the ad, once we select the winners and we run the winning ad, we're going to make sure that all of the possible queries are optimized through search. And we're going to make sure that we have a full closed loop on all of the platforms that consumers might go to in order to experience what it is that we've developed here. So we're going to post it on YouTube. We're going to have MySpace communities. We're going to make sure that, again, search is optimized so that if you want to find the ad, you can. So as far as integration goes, yeah, the online advertising banner did integrate with a type of packaging and perhaps, the branded logo on the TV spot. But I think more importantly, what this campaign showed us is that they integrated through the consumer journey, leveraging the platforms that consumers use, and they put the appropriate message or the appropriate service there at the time that the consumer wanted it. So, lastly, before I rail on, obviously it's important to use digital to drive communications planning. But I really mean drive it. Because digital isn't a channel. Media neutral planning is very exciting and very sort of buzzworthy 2 years ago. Because ostensibly right now, we're in a stage where digital has kind of broken out in the sense that it's not just about information gathering. So I don't just go online anymore to find out the best price of a car or to understand the definition of integration or to look up movie times, right? If you think back to the web, 5 or 6 years ago, that's what it was. And it really occupied, if we think about, consumer behavior or what consumers respond to or what they need, this control and safety. They could control it and they would get information. But the interesting thing is, technology enables action, but it didn't drive consumers to take it because it was stuff that they always wanted to do. It's just that there wasn't a digital platform for it 6 years ago. And I'd say Web 2.0 is probably one of the most exciting things to happen to media, but especially, obviously, to digital. So, 2 years ago when digital broke out and you could, find self-improvement, self-expression, obviously entertainment and connection and community across all sorts of digital platforms, especially those enabled with kind of this Web 2.0 social networks and instant messenger and, blogging and wikis and virtual world. All behavior became digitized or digital became behavior. It's a little bit gray and blurred. And their personal motivations were realized. So again, talking about integration, digital isn't a channel. It's the thing that enables really the consumer journey. So, it's not, again, about watching. It's not about watching TV or watching content or, even actively participating with content on multiple screens. It's about what goes on around the TV. So before and after, the chats during, the content that happens outside of TV. So, if I'm to really talk about integration and to show you the model that I would build if I were building a model for integration, frighteningly, it would look something a little bit like this, Yeah, you do have to start somewhere, right? You start with an idea or a product. You ensure that you have your consumer all important and in the middle of it. You have some man-made elements that you're testing out, so messages, ways to communicate the brand, tools, services, whatever it is. But then everything else is organic and transparent. If all of that stuff is digital in the sense that, you're connecting consumers to each other, you're enabling participation, you're answering questions, you're ensuring that you're optimized through search. But then, most importantly, after you've launched a lot of your initiatives, if you're watching and listening and optimizing and fueling communications and, inspiring advocacy, then digital is really the only enabler of that and needs to work with other mediums to ensure that integration actually happens. So, yes, all of this is unfounded, and all of this is still to be explored by media agencies, creative agencies, digital and traditional. But again, I think in this fragmented media time, if we're really true to ourselves and we're talking about integration, it's not about creative repetition or creative messaging to get that recall. It's about integration through the consumer journey that will get us the best results as far as communications are concerned. Thank you very much.